My dear brothers and sisters, every one of us goes through moments when the heart feels heavy, when the nights feel longer than the days, and when dua seems to be the only thing holding us together. There are times when you ask yourself quietly, Ya Allah, how long? Remember this, Allah never tests a soul without a purpose. And just as every storm has an end, every test also has signs that it is about to pass. The first big sign your test is almost over is a change inside your heart. You may still be facing the same problem, the same people, the same pressure, but you are no longer the same person. Where there was panic, there is now patience. Where there was anger, there is silence. Where there was constant complaint, there is now quiet trust. This inner calm is not weakness, it is strength placed in your heart by Allah. When your heart stops fighting Allah's decree and starts leaning on it, know that relief is near. The second sign is when Allah brings you closer to Him through the test. You begin to pray in ways you never prayed before. Your sujood becomes longer. Your du'as become more sincere. Not because you want something, but because you need Allah Himself. The test pushes you away from people and closer to your Creator. This is never accidental. Allah sometimes removes the world from your hands so that He can place Himself in your heart. When your connection with Allah becomes stronger than your attachment to the problem, the test is already losing its power over you. The third sign is when you start seeing lessons instead of pain. You look back and realize how much you have grown. You notice that your character is stronger, your faith is deeper, and your reliance on Allah is purer. What once broke you now teaches you. What once made you cry now makes you wiser. This is a clear sign that the test has done its job. Allah does not keep a test longer than necessary. Once it shapes you, strengthens you, and brings you back to Him, relief follows. My dear brothers and sisters, do not rush Allah's timing. Sometimes delay is mercy, sometimes silence is protection. Sometimes the hardest chapters are the ones that prepare you for the greatest blessings. Allah sees your patience, hears your silent du'as, and knows what your heart cannot explain. Inner calm is a sign of relief. When your heart becomes patient and trusting despite the problem remaining, it means Allah is preparing ease. When a person is in the middle of a test, the first thing that usually disappears is peace. The heart races, the mind overthinks, and every small difficulty feels heavier than it truly is. At the beginning of a trial, there is often fear, confusion, and a constant search for answers. You ask why this is happening, how long it will last, and what you did to deserve it. This reaction is human. But one of the greatest signs that the test is almost over is when this inner storm begins to settle, even though the situation itself has not yet changed. There comes a moment when the heart no longer panics the way it used to. The problem may still be there, the pressure may still exist, and the doors may still appear closed, yet something within you feels different. You stop reacting with desperation, you stop drowning in what-ifs. Instead, a quiet patience begins to grow. This does not mean you have given up or stopped caring. It means Allah has placed sakina, a deep calm, into your heart. This calm is not created by circumstances improving. It is created by trust taking root. At this stage, you begin to realize that panic never brought relief, but patience brings strength. You may still feel pain, but it no longer controls you. You learn how to sit with difficulty without letting it break you. You accept that some answers will come later, and some will only be understood in the akhirah. This acceptance is powerful. It is a sign that your heart is aligning itself with the decree of Allah. And when the heart aligns with Allah's will, relief is never far behind. Another beautiful change that happens is the way you speak to Allah. Before, your dua may have been rushed, desperate, and filled with frustration. Now your dua becomes softer, more honest, more trusting. You may even find yourself saying, Ya Allah, I don't understand, but I trust you. This is not the language of defeat. This is the language of surrender. And surrender to Allah is never a loss. When the heart reaches this level, the test has already started to loosen its grip. You also begin to notice that the opinions of people no longer shake you the way they once did. You stop explaining yourself to everyone. You stop seeking validation from creation. You realize that Allah knows your intentions, your struggles, and your sincerity. That realization alone brings peace. When the heart stops chasing approval and starts resting in Allah's knowledge, it becomes lighter, freer, and stronger. This inner calm is a mercy. It is Allah preparing you for what comes next, just like the sea becomes calm before the shore appears, the heart becomes calm before relief arrives. Allah does not usually remove a test while the heart is still frantic and attached to outcomes. He removes it when the heart learns to trust Him regardless of the outcome. That is why this inner peace is such a clear sign. It means the lesson is being learned. Sometimes Allah keeps the situation the same but changes you completely. You become more patient, more grounded, more connected to your faith. You realize that what once felt unbearable is now manageable. Not because you are strong on your own, but because Allah is strengthening you from within. This strength is not loud. It is quiet, steady, and deeply rooted in faith. So if you find yourself calmer than before, more patient than you ever thought you could be, and more trusting even when things are uncertain, do not ignore this sign. It is not coincidence. It is Allah's way of telling you that He is with you, that He has not abandoned you, and that this test has an end. The heart does not find peace on its own. Peace is a gift from Allah, and He places it in the heart when relief is near. Hold on to that calm. Protect it with remembrance, with gratitude, and with continued trust. Because when Allah gives peace before changing the situation, it means something far better is on its way. Closer connection to Allah. Tests that push you towards sincere dira, longer sujood, and reliance on Allah indicate the test is nearing its end. One of the most powerful signs that a test is almost over is the way it changes your relationship with Allah. At the beginning of hardship, people often look everywhere for help before they look upward. They turn to friends, to plans, to distractions, and to their own strength. And when none of that works, only then do they raise their hands in dua. But as the test continues, something shifts. You begin to realize that no door truly opens except the door Allah opens, and no heart can ease your pain except the one who created it. Slowly, the test strips away false sources of comfort. People disappoint you, plans fail, and the world shows you its limits. At first, this hurts deeply. It feels lonely. It feels unfair. But this loneliness has a purpose. It is not meant to break you. It is meant to redirect you. Allah removes reliance on creation so that reliance on Him can grow. And when that reliance becomes sincere, the test starts losing its weight. You begin to pray differently. Salah is no longer just a routine, it becomes a meeting. Sujood is no longer rushed, it becomes a place of safety. You find yourself talking to Allah in your own words, in your own language, with complete honesty. You cry, not because you are weak, but because your heart has finally found where it belongs. This closeness is not accidental. Allah sometimes uses pain as a bridge to bring His servant back to Him. What is beautiful is that even when the situation has not yet improved, your heart feels lighter. You may still be waiting, still struggling, still uncertain, but you feel held. You feel seen. You feel that Allah is listening. That feeling alone can carry you through the darkest moments. When your connection with Allah becomes stronger than your fear of the outcome, the test has already served its purpose. At this stage, you start to choose Allah over distractions. You turn to dhikr instead of panic. You turn to dua instead of complaints. You turn to patience instead of anger. These choices may seem small, but they are signs of a deep internal transformation. The test has softened your heart, humbled your ego, and refined your faith. Allah loves when His servant returns to Him sincerely, and He never keeps someone in pain when the pain has brought them closer. You may notice that you are no longer asking only for the problem to go away. Your du'as change. You begin asking for guidance, for strength, for forgiveness, for closeness. This is a powerful sign. When a servant starts valuing Allah more than the relief itself, Allah honors that heart in ways beyond expectation. Sometimes relief comes in the form you asked for, and sometimes it comes in a form far better than you imagined. There is also a deep sense of honesty that develops between you and Allah. You stop pretending to be strong. You admit your fears, your doubts, and your exhaustion. And in that honesty, you find peace. Allah does not want perfection from you. He wants sincerity. When the heart becomes sincere, the burden becomes lighter. This closeness to Allah also changes how you see life. You become more aware of the temporary nature of problems. You remember that this dunya was never meant to be perfect. You understand that ease and hardship both come from Allah, and both are forms of mercy. This understanding brings balance. You stop questioning Allah's wisdom and start trusting it. So if you find that a test has brought you closer to Allah than ever before, if your salah feels heavier with meaning, if your du'as feel more real, and if your heart turns to Allah instinctively, take comfort. This is not punishment. This is purification. This is elevation. Allah does not draw a servant near just to abandon them. When closeness increases, relief follows in this world or the next. Hold tightly to this connection. Do not let it fade when ease returns, because the greatest success of any test is not that it ends, but that it brings you closer to Allah. And when that happens, the test has already been won. Lessons replace pain. When you begin to see growth, wisdom, and purpose instead of only hurt, the test has fulfilled its role. Another powerful sign that a test is nearing its end is when the pain begins to transform into lessons. At the start of every trial, the focus is almost entirely on what is going wrong, on the hurt, on the loss, on the weight of the difficulty. The mind is consumed with questions, the heart with despair, and the soul feels cornered with no escape. But slowly, as the test continues, a remarkable change takes place. You begin to see beyond the surface of the problem. You start noticing that the pain is teaching you something, that the struggle has a purpose, and that your hardship is not without meaning. This transformation does not happen instantly. It begins quietly in small realizations. Perhaps you notice that you have become more patient than you were before. Perhaps you recognize that you are more compassionate toward others who are struggling. Perhaps you see that your perspective on life is shifting. You begin to value the little things, the simple moments, and the blessings you once took for granted. These realizations are subtle, yet profound. They signal that Allah is already working on the most important part of the test, your heart. Pain, when it is felt deeply and reflected upon sincerely, has the ability to teach resilience. You realize that challenges which once seemed unbearable can be faced with courage. You understand that your emotions, although intense, do not have to control you. You begin to see that patience and reliance on Allah are far stronger than any fleeting comfort. This awareness, this inner wisdom, is a sign that the test has already accomplished its greatest work. Even if the external circumstances remain difficult, the inner growth is undeniable. Another lesson that emerges from trials is gratitude. When the heart has faced difficulty, it begins to notice the blessings that were always present but overlooked. The sun feels brighter, the laughter of a loved one feels warmer, and the simplest moments of peace feel precious. Gratitude in the midst of trials is a gift from Allah. It shows that the heart has matured, that it has learned to find light even in darkness. When you start seeing the value of what you still have despite the pain, it is a sign that relief is on the way. Growth through trials also teaches humility. When hardship breaks down pride and self-reliance, it opens the door for reliance on Allah and empathy for others. You begin to understand that your strength is not yours alone, but comes from the one who created you. This humility softens the heart, purifies intentions, and prepares the soul for the blessings that follow. When the ego steps aside and the heart surrenders, the test begins to lose its intensity, because the lesson it needed to teach has been learned. At this stage, reflection becomes a powerful tool. You may find yourself looking back at the beginning of the test and realizing how far you have come. You recognize the changes in your behavior, your mindset, and your faith. You see that what once broke you now builds you. This reflection not only strengthens gratitude, but also strengthens hope. You begin to trust that Allah's timing is perfect, that every hardship was measured carefully, and that every difficulty had a purpose that only He fully knows. The awareness that the trial has been meaningful in shaping your character is a sign that the end is near. The final part of this lesson is patience and acceptance. You no longer resist what is happening. You no longer cry over what cannot be changed. You understand that Allah is both the tester and the best planner. When a person reaches this state, they have internalized the test. They have seen the hidden wisdom. They have accepted the divine decree, not out of resignation, but out of understanding. This acceptance is not weakness, it is strength. It is a spiritual readiness that signals the test is about to conclude, because Allah never keeps someone in a trial longer than necessary once the heart has absorbed its lessons. So, when you start noticing that every difficulty is teaching you something, that your character is being shaped, that patience and gratitude are emerging, and that your perspective on life is deepening, take comfort. Pain is no longer just pain, it has become a guide, a teacher, a sign of Allah's mercy in disguise. The test is almost over, not because the problem has disappeared, but because the heart has transformed. Relief is near, and the wisdom gained is permanent.